Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Hi, Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to the Slippery Slope. So finally, a report's come out stating what we already all knew. In actual fact, everyone who has the courage to think clearly, the ability to speak clearly, knew very well where the coronavirus came from, what the extremely most likely source of the outbreak was from. However, authorities, governments, no one around the world wanted to really come out. No one had the courage to come out and say this is right. This is it. The Chinese government, other than probably Trump, I assume he's probably going to say he might come out and say more about it. But this headline here, I'll read what the Australian newspapers are saying. The Courier Mail here in Queensland: COVID-19 origin identified in bombshell US investigation. So there's been a 2-year probe into COVID-19, and this has pinpointed the precise location. US congressional investigators believe the pandemic began. This has left China outraged. Well, I'm sorry. The rest of the world should already be outraged at China. US politicians concluded a 2-year investigation into the COVID-19 outbreak, backing the theory that the virus likely leaked from a Chinese laboratory. I still blows me away how it's just, well, it's likely. It's likely. The virus came out from right next door to the laboratory, but it's still just likely. And, it's had all the traits, the trademarks of the manufactured virus, but still just likely. They still couldn't. Anyway, a 520-page report from the Republican-controlled House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic looked at the federal and state level response as well as the pandemic's origins and vaccination efforts. This work will help the United States and the world predict the next pandemic. I don't know. Do you really need this to predict the next pandemic? Because wasn't it Fauci and the Chinese that planned the whole thing anyway? So it goes on to say that US federal agencies, the World Health Organization, well, there's a trustworthy organization, the World Health Organization. You can trust anything that they say. And scientists across the planet have arrived at different conclusions about the most likely origin of COVID-19. Now, why do you think the World Health Organization has arrived at a different conclusion? Does it have anything to do with the amount of money that the Chinese government gives them and the fact that they are in bed with the Chinese government about this from the get-go? No, not at all. And so it says no consensus has emerged. Well, who would have thunk it? Because the World Health Organization is never going to go against China while the Chinese government is paying their way. So most believe it to have spread from animals in China. That's a load of rubbish. Most. I don't think anyone really believes that if they're honest with themselves. But a US intelligence analysis said last year that the virus may have been genetically engineered. May have been. Okay, right. And escaped from a virology lab in the Chinese city of Wuhan, where human cases first emerged. It may have. Okay, so the congressional panel was persuaded by the lab leak theory after meeting 25 times. Seriously, who are these people? They have to meet 25 times to be persuaded to see the truth. Conducting more than 30 transcribed interviews and reviewing more than 1 million pages of documents. So here we've got pictures of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The investigation included 2 days of interviews behind closed doors with Anthony, the criminal Fauci, in my opinion, the government scientist who became the nation's most trusted expert in the chaotic early days of the 2020 outbreak. Was he really, or was it just a narrative pushed by the mainstream media, by MSNBC or whatever they call themselves these days? Fauci's clashes with former and incoming President Donald Trump over the response sparked fury on the right, and he now lives with security protection following death threats against his family. Republicans accused the 83-year-old immunologist of helping to set off the worst pandemic in a century by approving funding passed on to Chinese scientists they accuse of manufacturing the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus that caused causes COVID-19. And why do they accuse them of doing that? Because it all actually happened. Didn't they? Don't they already have the documentation? Because he actually did approve the funding, and actually did pass it on to Chinese scientists, and they actually did manufacture the exact virus that then leaked out into the rest of the world. Hasn't all this already been proven? But now, anyway, so amongst its headline conclusions, the report said the National Institutes of Health had indeed funded contentious gain of function research, which seeks to enhance viruses as a way of finding ways to combat them at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Does anyone really think it's a way of combating viruses? So this virus doesn't exist, so we're going to create it because we want to combat it in case it does exist. But it never did exist, but now it does. So now we need a way to combat it. And by the way, then we can charge countries all around the world billions and billions of dollars and rake in more and more money. This is just a moneymaker. That's all it was, and a way to help control the world population, a way to help just test the environment and see whether how willing people are to go under a tyrannical reign. That's all it was. Just a great big experiment. So Fauci angrily denied covering up the origins of COVID-19. If you do it angrily, it makes it all more believable. Before the panel in June, arguing that it would be molecularly impossible for the bat viruses studied at the lab to be turned into the virus that caused the pandemic. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I mean, crikey, does he really think we believe him? But the panel's report said SARS-CoV-2 likely emerged because of a laboratory or research-related accident which was planned. Beijing hit back at the report, saying it had no credibility and accusing the United States of using the outbreak for political manipulation. Okay, China. Sure thing. The authoritative scientific conclusion drawn by the China WHO Joint Expert Team, because China, remember, are funding World Health Organization, is that a laboratory leak is extremely unlikely. A foreign ministry spokesman, Lin Jian, told a regular news conference. In the absence of any substantive evidence, the so-called US report has concocted leading conclusions, slandered China, planted false evidence, he said. The probe also found that lockdowns did more harm than good, no joke, and that mask mandates were ineffective at controlling the spread of COVID-19. Oh, golly gee. Funny thing is, but I still see people getting around with masks every now and then. But it's ineffective anyway. So this is contradicting other research showing that masking in public does reduce transmission rates. Social distancing guidelines also came under criticism, although travel restrictions were deemed to have saved lives. Investigators found that Trump's Operation Warp Speed, the publicly funded project to develop COVID vaccines, was a tremendous success, but that school closures would have an enduring impact on U.S. children. So, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is that they are telling us, they are confirming what logically, what people with the ability to think logically already knew. Everyone already knew this. If you are going to be honest with yourself, you already knew this. But it's good to hear the American government finally coming to grips with the situation. It's good to see that they're really just putting the Chinese government and the World Health Organization on notice. That's what they're doing. Putting them on notice. We know what you did. Don't do it again. Otherwise. That's what they're saying, in my humble opinion. Anyway, you let me know what you think. Crikey. I'm Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher. I'm on fire.